Hi all. I wanted to get us started with this introduction to Shakespeare. And our lesson objective is just to familiarize ourselves with the historical context of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. So this is a play with a lot of juicy details, definitely a play of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. We have star-crossed lovers. We have parental disapproval, we have betraying of the rules, we have violence, and we have poison. And all of this should be taken into account of like the very complicated history that Shakespeare was writing in and the types of, expectations put upon young people in this context, people your age. So as a starter, and you'll see on the document in Canvas, I'm asking that you consider, what do you already know about this bald white man named Shakespeare pictured on this slide? What do you know about the time he was writing? And I want you to look at these images because you might not know a thing, right? Like this might be a very new context to you. I want you to look at these pictures and look at the clothing, look at the details, look at that theater house. What do we know about that? And just take a moment to write down your response to this question. What do you already know about Shakespeare? And the time, the history, the period in which he was writing. As I said, today's lesson, we're going to learn a little bit about Shakespeare, and we're going to familiarize ourselves with the context of the play. Why might this be important, you could ask? Well, it's really difficult for people like you and like me to understand what was going on at the time that Shakespeare was writing and why maybe these two people who can't be together are so stuck and trapped by their families and these expectations, particularly Juliet, who's a young woman who's valued only for her virginity and for her value as the daughter of a wealthy man. And Romeo, who's a little bit of a bad boy, also highly emotional, and comes from a different family with different expectations. You might ask, who is William Shakespeare? So arguably in Western literature, particularly in the old white person canon, Shakespeare is the world's greatest playwright. He wrote 37 plays, including Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet. For those of you who like Disney, people argue that there are several Disney movies that relate to some of these Shakespeare plays, so that might be something you're interested in looking at. He was the son of John Shakespeare and Mary Arden. So in your Canvas form, you'll see that you technically should be in breakout rooms, and each of you is given a period of life to research. I am going to ask that you do all of this on your own, and you're going to collect facts, and then we're going to share them as a group when we come together next class. So ideally what we'll do is we'll put together a slide deck, and then that will be a useful tool for all of us to study with. What that means is that you need to do your part so that your classmates aren't missing important information that they'll be quizzed on. And the students who complete their portion of history or who complete most of this assignment to the highest detail level will get special rewards. So, important facts. Shakespeare had 7 siblings. He never actually published his plays. People published them after he died or in his place. He performed in many of his own plays as an actor. He wrote 37 plays, 154 sonnets or love poems. His last play was Two Noble Kingsmen. He has suicide in his play 13 times, which is not a lucky number, as you know. And some people think that some of his plays are missing, which totally makes sense given the time. His longest play is 4 hours. It's called Hamlet. And if you've watched The Lion King, Hamlet is loosely based, or The Lion King is loosely based on Hamlet. So to develop our understanding, I'm going to ask that you watch this video on your own time. It's a small animated biography. You can gather notes for your task from this video, and I highly recommend it. So there were certain events that influenced the play of Romeo and Juliet, and it's important that we have some background knowledge so that we can understand this play a little bit better. Shakespeare was writing during the English Renaissance, a time of rebirth. So this time when the old ways of just understanding things through religion, through the fact that like God controlled everything, was being questioned, and being questioned by these fields of art, literature, science, politics. It's when the Mona Lisa came to being. It's when things like chemistry and atoms and understanding the planets started to become aligned. And it's also when the printing press had already been developed and things were being able to be published more widely, and people were gaining literacy, the ability to read. Some people have challenged this idea of the English Renaissance, saying that it wasn't a rebirth for everyone because women did not share the same advancements or rights in English culture as men did, and their legal status was that below men. And it also it has this idea that like if you're reborn in civilization, then maybe the time before was not civilized rather than just a period of history. Some of the other terms that people use are Elizabethan and Jacobin. And this refers to the rulers at the time, Elizabeth I and King James I. And Shakespeare's life and career spans these monarchies. It also spans a period of plague, which, similar to COVID, influenced media and politics during the Elizabethan era. So, social class, you're going to add 3 notes to your Canvas page from this slide. And I want you to think about the people who had a lot, the aristocrats, and the people who had very little, who were poor. Everyone else, the laborers, the people who worked the fields, the people who often did not gain access to high quality of food or health resources, or who lived in poorer parts of a kingdom or a realm or a city. Aristocrats were born with wealth. But during this time, there was also this growth in trades and different professions. So doctors, lawyers, scientists, publishers. And so a middle class began to form, which really caused a lot of anxiety for people up at the top. I want you to also pay attention to this role of Queen Elizabeth. So in a time when men had most of the rights, Queen Elizabeth was a very powerful figure. And she was thought of as this virginal queen, because she was never married through her 45-year reign, but this allowed her to obtain a certain amount of power. She loved the theater, but only really got theater performed to her in public, or in private, because the aristocrats and kings and queens did not typically mingle with those below them in the public sphere.